to bring us home today, we have Miramar Resources, ASX code M2R, and they've got a market cap of just around 10 million. Miramar Resources is a Western Australian-focused mineral exploration company with projects in the Eastern Goldfields, the Murchison and Gascoyne regions. A warm welcome to Miramar Executive Chairman, Allan Kelly. Allan, welcome to the network.
Great. Thanks, Paul, and thanks for everyone for tuning in. Good afternoon and good morning still for us here in Western Australia. I'm going to give a run-through of some of our projects. It's going to be a pretty quick run-through, but hopefully you'll be able to see the value that's inherent in the company. Next slide, please. So ASX listed, obviously this is just a summary of a lot of things that we're doing at the moment. So there's a disclaimer there, and please look at our website and our ASX announcements for more information about our projects. Next slide. So just a summary of the company. As Paul said, we're WA focused. We're an exploration company. We've basically got two groups of projects. We've got some projects in the Eastern Goldfields around Kalgoorlie. And they're mostly gold focused, but we're going to talk about a little bit of lithium potential that we've identified at our Randalls project, and we'll say more about that on Monday. I'm going to spend most of the time talking about our whale shark project and a little bit of time about our Bangamore project up in the Capricorn origin. And our main focus as a company is to create value for our shareholders through discovery of large deposits. So we're looking for a number of discoveries within our portfolio. We think we've got potential for the discovery of a large, shallow iron oxide copper gold project at Whale Shark. And the examples of that would be Ernest Henry or Carrapateena or Prominent Hill. In our Bangamore projects over near Mount Augustus, we think we've got potential for nickel copper PGEs. So something like a Nova or a Nebo Babel in the West Musgraves. And then, as I said, down around Kalgoorlie, we're primarily looking for gold. And we've got a very nice land position in between the Kalgoorlie Super Pit and Paddington. From a corporate point of view, I think we've got very good leverage to exploration success, very tight share register, a low enterprise value, and a board that has found and developed and produced from projects before. Next slide, please. So we're looking for in-demand commodities. We're looking for nickel, we're looking for copper, and we're looking for gold. Everyone knows that there's going to be huge demand for a number of metals as a result of the EV and renewable energy demand, and also gold is taking off at the moment as well. So we're well placed in those three commodities. Next slide, please. And we're looking for those commodities in a new emerging mineral province. There's a lot of action in the Gascoyne and the Capricorn origin at the moment in Western Australia. A lot of people making lithium and rare earth discoveries. We're actually looking for something a little bit different. We're looking for an iron oxide copper gold deposit just off the end of the Capricorn origin there under the Carnarvon Basin. And we're looking for nickel, copper and PGEs in the Capricorn origin related to dolerite sills. So, emerging province, quite sort of poorly explored compared to other parts of WA. And we're applying exploration ideas from other areas in this new province. Next slide. So this is our whale shark project. It sits in one of these Proterozoic origins, and you can see a gravity map on the right-hand side there showing the main what we call origins, which sit around the edges of the Archean cratons in WA. And these Proterozoic origins host big deposits. You've got things like Nifty and Telfer and Avieron. You've got the West Musgrave nickel deposits out towards the South Australian border there. You've got Tropicana and Nova Bollinger. And we sit in another one of these origins called the Capricorn origin. And our whale shark project sits off the end of that origin where it goes underneath the basin or the Carnarvon Basin. And our whale shark project is an IOCG target, so that's an iron oxide copper gold target, and it's got a lot of similarities to big deposits in South Australia and Queensland, with the exception that we don't have to drill through 500, 600, 700, 800 metres of cover to actually get to the target rocks. Our basement depth here is only sort of between about 80 to 100 metres. Next slide, please. So why explore for iron oxide copper gold deposits? Well, they're very big. For a start, they're very big. They can be hundreds of millions of tonnes up to multiple billion tonnes if you look at something like Olympic Dam. They're very valuable. They have an average copper grade of about 1% and a gold grade of about 1 gram per tonne. So that means if you find one of these, you can have millions of tonnes of copper and millions of ounces of gold. And they also have silver, they have cobalt, sometimes they have uranium, they have rare earths, and they can also have a lot of iron. The other thing is that it's all very well to find it, but you actually want to make money from it. So a good thing about ISCG deposits is they have pretty simple metallurgy, predominantly chalcopyrite, and if you're lucky, a bit of chalcocite and bornite. So pretty straightforward processing if you come across a great deposit. Next slide, please. So what have we done? We picked up the project in 2020. I'd actually worked on the project back in the 90s with Western Mining, and the project was identified because it had a lot of similarities to the Ernest Henry deposit. So we picked it up in 2020. The tenement was granted in 2021. And then we tried a couple of programs of soil sampling using a technique called MMI, mobile metal ions. And that's a technique that can potentially see through cover. So the fact is we've got about sort of 80 to 100 metres of exotic cover over the top of the target rocks. But that soil sampling technique outlined a couple of large copper, gold, silver, moly, uranium anomalies that sat in what we call the neck of the whale shark granite. Last year, we went out there with an air core rig and we drilled a grid of what we call interface holes. So basically, we drilled down just to the top of the basement and we wanted to take a sample of the top of the basement, so almost like a subsurface soil sample. And when we analysed those results, we got a large anomaly, again, in copper, cobalt, gold, silver, and rare earths, which are all signatures of these iron oxide copper gold deposits. So we focused in on this sort of northwest trending structure in the neck of the granite, where there's a gravity high, there's MMI anomalism, and also the good anomalism in the air core. So this year, we're lucky to get funding through a WA government program called the Exploration Incentive Scheme. And that basically gave us $180,000 towards a diamond drilling program at Whale Shark. And we only announced a couple of weeks ago that our first diamond drilling program, which targeted the gravity high in the granite underneath those anomalies, hit copper sulfide mineralisation. Next slide, please. So we did 3 holes. As I said, it was co-funded by the West Australian government. They hit a granite, as we sort of expected, within that granite pluton at Whale Shark. But the key thing is that of the 3 holes, 2 of the holes hit copper sulfide mineralisation. And this is the first time that copper mineralisation has actually been seen at Whale Shark. So that was quite exciting. There's a couple of photos there. The core is being processed at the moment in Kalgoorlie and sent off for assay. So hopefully we'll see the results in a few weeks. But we're excited enough to go back with another program of diamond drilling, and we're hoping to get that done by the end of the year. Next slide, please. So, we think we've got significant potential here. We've got all the key ingredients for a large, shallow ISCG deposit. We've got a Proterozoic granitoid. We've got iron-rich rocks nearby in the form of banded iron formation. We've got overlapping gravity and magnetic anomalism around the edges of the granite. We've got anomalism in all the key elements that you'd want to see for an ISCG, both in surface sampling and also in the air core drilling. We've confirmed bedrock copper mineralisation, so we need to find out where that mineralisation is accumulating into a potentially economic deposit. And also we've seen alteration and rare earth signatures, which when you compare them with published data for other deposits, suggests that, we're onto an ISCG system here. And the other thing is that we've got significant size potential. As I said, these things can be really big. They can be hundreds of millions of tonnes at 1% copper and 1 gram gold, and that's what we're looking for here. Next slide, please. So the next steps at Whale Shark, the image on the right is a magnetic image just showing the sort of current drilling status in relation to that structure, to the neck of the granite. So we want to do further diamond drilling along that northwest structure. We want to test the magnetic anomaly at the northwestern end and also at the southeastern end. We want to continue with the air core drilling that we did, because that's been very useful in sort of mapping out places that we want to go back to with diamond drilling. And there's a really nice MMI target up to the northeast that we call the Mangrove Jack target, and that hasn't been drilled yet, so we want to do that. And then we also want to look at a few other methods, geophysical and other methods that we can use to target further drilling. And we've been successful in getting some R&D refunds for this project, and that will help us sort of progress the project further on. Next slide, please. This is our other project in the Gascoyne or the Capricorn origin. This is called the Bangamore region. And here we're looking for nickel, copper and PGEs. Specifically, we're looking for Norilsk-style nickel, copper, PGE deposits. So these are huge deposits up in Siberia and Russia. And the key ingredients of those deposits are that they sit on a craton margin, which is where we are. We're in between the Pilbara and the Yilgarn. There's major crustal scale structures, which are mantle tapping structures, which are like a plumbing system for these deposits, and we have those. There's an extensive volume of mafic magma, which are the dolerite sills that you can see in green, which intrude into the basin. And there's two ages there that we think the most prospective ones are the Calcathara dolerites, and I'll talk about that more in a bit of a minute. And the other thing that you need for these deposits is you need a sulfur source. So there's a lot of sediments within this basin that have sulfur. And so, the combination of the dolerite sills and the sulfur can produce pretty large nickel, copper, PGE deposits. There's also some regional signatures. The Geological Survey of Western Australia did some large regional geochem sampling programs back in the 90s and early 2000s. And there's a number of nickel, copper and PGE anomalies that sit sort of along these main structures here. And then in 2013, the Geological Survey and also Geoscience Australia flew a big regional EM survey, an electromagnetic survey, and that highlighted a number of conductors that could be related to nickel, copper, PGE sulfide mineralisation. Next slide. I'll just focus in on our Mount Vernon project, which was just off to sort of east of that other map I just showed. And this is probably the most advanced of the targets that we've got at the moment. To scale, this sort of tenement from end to end is about 40 kilometres. There's a number of these Calcathara dolerite sills, which are the same age as the geology you see in the West Musgraves, where the large Nebo and Babel nickel deposits are. And that red sort of dotted line is the basal contact of the dolerite sill, where it intrudes into sulfidic sediments. There's a number of historic rock chips along that basal contact with very high nickel and copper results, but all the previous drilling that was done here was done for copper, lead and zinc. So no one's really targeted, nickel, copper, PGEs. It was all about looking for another Abra, because the Abra deposit sits just to the south of us here. So in 2022, we flew a more detailed EM survey over the entire tenement. And we came up with a number of EM conductors, which are highlighted by those yellow stars, which sit where the dolerite sills intrude into the sulfidic sediments, which is a classic, geological setting for nickel, copper, PGE mineralisation. So what we're planning to do actually in the next couple of weeks, we're going to get up on the ground and do some rock chip sampling and walk along the contacts. And then we're also going to plan to do some RC or diamond drilling of some of the most high priority EM anomalies at Mount Vernon and see what we come up with. Next slide. Finally, down the south now, looking at the goldfields. This is our Gidgee project. It was our flagship project when we listed a couple of years ago, for good reason. You can see where it sits, in between Kalgoorlie with the Super Pit and Paddington, which is a 4 million ounce deposit, and the Kanowna Belle deposit. We're really excited about Gidgee. It sits within this major regional structure called the Barara Shear Zone, in proximity to multiple deposits and also processing plants. Over 2 years, we outlined a number of large air core gold footprints here. We've outlined what they call an exploration target of about 100,000 ounces of shallow air core gold. But the real prize here is a Paddington, is a large bedrock gold deposit. So, you know, we haven't done a lot of work here in the last sort of 6 to 12 months because the focus has been up north, but we're very keen to get back here and see what we can turn up, you know, so close to Kalgoorlie. Next slide, please. We're getting to the end. This is a corporate snapshot of the company. As I said, quite tight share register, only about 148 million shares on issue. Gives us a market cap today of about $7 million with about $1.5 million in the bank. So an EV of about, you know, 5.5 million, which is very cheap, I think, given the number of projects and the size of the projects that we've got. If we look at the board, I'm a geologist with 30 years experience. I founded Dore Minerals, which went from a $4 million IPO to a $300 million gold mining company. Marion Bush is also a geologist, and she ran a gold development project in Guinea in West Africa. And we have a non-technical director as well. So good experience in finding and building things with some sort of non-technical expertise to keep us honest. I think one more slide to go. I think it's just a summary. Next slide. So why Miramar Resources? You know, first and foremost, we've got a track record of discovering, developing and operating projects. We've got an opportunity to find a very large and shallow ISCG deposit at Whale Shark, which could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars if we're successful. You know, next door, we've got the opportunity to find, you know, nickel copper mineralisation in the Bangamore, and, you know, ideally, you know, a project there could be very large as well. And sort of sitting in the background, believe it or not, is, you know, a project right next to one of the richest patches of earth, you know, on the planet at Kalgoorlie. So, you know, very tight share register, very low EV, people who have done it before, and great potential opportunities that provide a lot of substantial upside for our shareholders. And I think that's about it. I think next slide is just a web address. So we can probably flick to that to let people know where we are. West Australian, small team, based in South Perth, and spend a lot of our money on the ground. Thanks very much, Paul.
Allan, many thanks. Great presentation. I've got a few questions for you here. Let's kick off with the presence of that copper sulfide mineralisation now confirmed at Whale Shark. What are the next steps for the formation?
Yeah, so we'll wait on the assays from the diamond drilling that we've done. So that core is being processed and assayed at the moment, but we've already made the decision that we want to go back. So hopefully by the end of the year, we'll be back out there again with the diamond rig. We're just going through the process of getting some heritage approvals to do a second round of diamond drilling. The first program was 3 holes and it was about 1,000 metres. So we're looking to do a sort of similar program, another 3 or 4 holes for about 1,000 metres. And then we'll look at doing the air core drilling probably next year, once we've seen what the diamond drilling looks like. The other thing I'll note is that we've applied for funding through the BHP Explore program as well. And given that they're world experts in ISCG mineralisation, we hope we might get a Guernsey for that too.
Fingers crossed for you there, my friend. And there's a question here. When can we expect to see the core analyst results?
Good question. As I said, the first couple of holes have been cut and are in the lab. The third hole's been cut now. So hopefully I would think maybe 4 to 6 weeks. But we've got some other exciting stuff that we're going to do in the meantime as well at Bangamore and at Randalls as well.
And how do the results so far compare to what others have encountered in the region? And are there any obvious similarities to other larger deposits nearby?
Yeah, well, in terms of Whale Shark, really that's the only one. There's no other ISCG actually being discovered in Western Australia to this point. There's people looking for ISCGs out in the West Aruntas, which is sort of near the Northern Territory border. There's been talk of ISCG mineralisation out under the Nullarbor Plain, but this would actually be the first ISCG in our sort of neck of the woods. I have experience in working in ISCG exploration in South Australia with Avoca Resources after the discovery of Prominent Hill. So I've seen a lot of this sort of mineralisation before. So I guess there's not a really good comparison in WA, but there's definitely comparable with things in South Australia and Queensland, and that's why we're really excited.
Yeah, Gotcha. And you mentioned earlier that you recently completed a capital raising. Are you confident now that the balance sheet is sufficiently funded to support the plans and the drilling programs?
Well, as an explorer, you always need more money, but it's always a question of, what price you're going to raise it at. I'm hoping that if people start to really see the value potential in our big projects at Whale Shark and Bangamore, that we might get a bit of a kick in the share price to put some more drill holes into the ground, because these projects can be really large. Probably the most recent analogy to Whale Shark would be something like Javieron up in the Patterson. They made a discovery with the first few holes. Newcrest came on board and then helped them out, and they've been able to progress that. So, that's the sort of pathway that we would see for a project of this scale, would be try and prove the concept pretty quickly, and then get someone interested to come and help out either actively or just passively through funding.
Yeah, gotcha. And one to finish up here, what M&A activity, if any, are you seeing in the region?
Oh, well, there's a lot going on sort of up in the Gascoyne. There's a lot of lithium explorers there. I don't think there's too much M&A at the moment. Everyone's trying to work out what they might have on their own ground. I know that we're based out of Onslow when we work in Whale Shark, and MinRes have got a pretty big footprint there because they're building a new iron ore project up at Onslow, and they're going to be shipping it out of the Onslow port. So, they're an obvious person to go talk to if we find something. FMG and Wailu are both sort of working in the area as well. Hastings are building the big Yangibana rare earth project too. So there's a lot of action in our neck of the woods. So, don't be surprised that if we find something that we don't get a knock on the door.
I think it's good. Alan, been an absolute pleasure. Really fascinating story, and one we'll keep a very close eye on over the coming months, and we'll get you back on for the end of the year. Many thanks for your time.
Great. Thanks, Paul, and thanks for everyone for listening in.